The descent. Eremos had devoured her hopes first, then her strength, and now it waited patiently for her final breath. Kaida Voss lay half-buried in the caustic soil, her once pristine flight suit torn and discolored by the moon's corrosive atmosphere. The twin suns of the Moros system cast harsh light across the scarred landscape, their glare reflecting off crystalline formations that jutted like broken teeth from the ruined surface. She hadn't moved in 36 hours. Her muscles had seized days ago, locked by dehydration and exposure to Eremos' toxic air. Only the shallow rise and fall of her chest signaled life, a stubborn rhythm refusing to surrender despite her mind's acceptance of fate. Kaida's olive skin had grown ashen, streaked with chemical burns where the atmosphere had eaten through her protective gear. Her black hair, once kept in a regulation military braid, spread around her like spilled ink. The Republic insignia on her shoulder, the emblem she'd once worn with pride, was now nearly unrecognizable, corroded by the same elements slowly claiming her body. No one was coming. That was the point of Eremos. This moon orbiting the gas giant Thanatos was where the Republic discarded its embarrassments. Not just common criminals, but those whose crimes were political. Inconvenient. Those whose very existence threatened the carefully constructed narrative of a benevolent interplanetary government. The irony wasn't lost on Kaida. She'd been sentenced to die on a moon named for desolation, in a system named for doom. But then, the Republic had always appreciated symbolism. 3 weeks ago, she'd stood before the military tribunal, unflinching as they read her crimes: insubordination, dereliction of duty, disobeying direct orders during active engagement. The punishment had been swift: exile without supplies, without communication, without hope. They'd called it mercy. But she remembered the children. Fire had consumed Helio Station that day, alarms blaring as the environmental systems failed one by one. Her commander's orders had been explicit: evacuate essential personnel only. Resources were limited. The colony's families were expendable. She'd refused. Instead of piloting the evac shuttle back to the cruiser, she'd landed in the civilian sector. Packed the vessel with as many as it could hold. Children, parents, the elderly, 47 lives that would have otherwise ended on that burning station. Her commander had been waiting when she docked with the cruiser. She'd been detained before the rescued civilians could even disembark. She never knew if they survived the journey home. The tribunal had been a formality. They'd already decided her fate. Her final memory before exile was Commander Varen's face, not angry, but disappointed, as if she'd failed some fundamental test of loyalty. Now Eremos had become her tomb. And Kaida was ready for the end. Until the shadow fell across her face. At first, she thought it was death finally claiming her. Then she heard the crunch of boots on crystalline soil, the soft beep of a scanner. A figure knelt beside her, their face obscured by a rebreather mask and protective goggles. Still alive, a male voice muttered, sounding both surprised and concerned. Barely. The scanner in his gloved hand emitted a series of tones as it assessed her condition. She tried to focus, but her vision blurred at the edges. His environmental suit wasn't Republic standard, it was patchwork, salvaged parts integrated with custom modifications. The insignia on his shoulder made her heart stutter, the crossed arrows of the Republic's 42nd Navigator Division. Her division, before her fall. Panic surged through her weakened body. Had they sent someone to finish what exile had started? But that made no sense. No one came to Eremos. That was the point. The stranger produced a canteen, carefully removed her cracked rebreather, and trickled water between her parched lips. Kaida choked, her throat too dry to swallow properly, but the moisture was a shock to her system, painful and wonderful at once. "Easy," he murmured. "Small sips." When she could finally focus, she saw him clearly for the first time. He'd removed his goggles, revealing eyes the color of the storm clouds that gathered over Eramo's northern hemisphere. His face was weathered, a thin scar running along his jawline, his expression unreadable as he administered a medical stim to her neck. The injection jolted through her system like lightning. Her back arched, lungs expanding painfully as oxygen-rich compounds flooded her bloodstream. For the first time in days, her mind cleared, thoughts crystallizing through the fog of near death. "Who?" she rasped, her voice a broken thing. "Nevin," he replied simply. "Nevin Rowe. Try not to talk yet." He worked methodically, checking her vitals, applying dermal patches to the worst chemical burns. His movements were practiced, efficient, military training, she realized. Not a random scavenger then. "Why?" Kaida managed, gesturing weakly toward the insignia on his shoulder. Nevin glanced down, his expression tightening momentarily. "Long story. Not important right now." He continued his work in silence, stabilizing her condition with the practiced ease of someone familiar with battlefield medicine. After several minutes, he helped her sit up slowly, supporting her weight as she fought waves of dizziness. Her eyes fell to the restraint cuff still locked around her right wrist, the Republic's neural tracker now dead and corroded. "Prisoner?" he asked, nodding toward the cuff. "Exile," she corrected, her voice still raw. "Former Navigator Lieutenant, 42nd Division." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, perhaps even understanding. "That explains your flight suit." He didn't press further, focusing instead on securing a portable oxygen generator to her suit's remaining functional ports. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the occasional beep of his medical scanner and the distant rumble of Eramo's unstable tectonic plates. 1,000 questions burned in Kaida's mind, but weakness kept her silent. Why was he here? Why save her? What did he want? As if reading her thoughts, Nevin spoke. "I'm not Republic, if that's what you're thinking. Not anymore." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I'm a salvager. Independent contractor." "The insignia?" she managed. His hand moved unconsciously to his shoulder. "Keep it as a reminder." "Of what?" "Of what I'm not willing to become." His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, a shared understanding that went beyond words. Whatever had brought him to Eramo's, whatever had led him to wear a symbol of the organization that had cast him out, it wasn't simple. Kaida studied him, taking in the details she'd missed before. The way he constantly scanned their surroundings. The carefully maintained equipment that spoke of limited resources maximized through diligent care. The weapon at his hip, not Republic issue but effective nonetheless. "You're alone," she observed. He nodded. "Have been for a while." "Why help me?" Nevin was silent for a moment, considering. "Because I'm tired of watching people die when I can do something about it." There was weight behind his words, the heaviness of accumulated regrets. Before she could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. Nevin's head snapped up, eyes narrowing as he scanned the horizon. The sky had begun to darken, not with night but with something worse. "Acid storm," he said, voice tight. "Big one. We need shelter." He glanced at her, assessing. "Can you walk?" Kaida tested her legs, wincing at the pain that shot through her muscles. "With help." Nevin nodded, gathering their supplies with swift efficiency. My shelter's 2 kilometers north. We need to move fast. She accepted his support, leaning against him as they began their slow progress across the hostile landscape. The storm clouds gathered on the horizon, purple-black and threatening. Eremos was about to unleash another of its deadly tantrums. "Your ship?" she asked, hope flaring briefly. "Damaged," he replied. "Working on repairs." Hope dimmed but didn't extinguish entirely. If there was a ship, there was a possibility of escape, remote, perhaps, but more than she'd had an hour ago. As they trudged across the barren terrain, the wind began to rise, carrying particles of caustic dust that stung any exposed skin. Nevin pulled his goggles back on and handed Kaida a spare pair, which she fitted over her eyes with trembling hands. "Almost there," he assured her as the first drops of acid rain began to fall, sizzling where they hit the ground. Through the gathering storm, Kaida could make out the outline of a structure, not natural, but not Republic design either. A shelter cobbled together from salvaged ship parts, half buried in the side of a rocky outcropping for protection from Eremos' frequent storms. As they reached the entrance, the sky opened up fully, releasing a torrent that would dissolve exposed flesh in minutes. Nevin punched a code into a makeshift security panel, and a door hissed open. He ushered her inside just as lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the desolate landscape they'd escaped. The door sealed behind them with a pneumatic hiss, muffling the storm's fury. Inside, emergency lights flickered on, revealing a space that was Spartan but surprisingly well-equipped. Survival gear lined the walls, along with salvaged technology and what appeared to be communications equipment in various states of repair. "Welcome to home," Nevin said without irony, helping her to a sleeping platform in the corner. "It's not much, but it's storm-proof." Kaida sank onto the platform, exhaustion overwhelming her now that immediate danger had passed. Questions still crowded her mind, about Nevin, about his presence on Eremos, about the insignia he wore like a scar, but they would have to wait. For now, she was alive. In a place where death was meant to be certain, she had found an unexpected ally. Whether friend or foe remained to be seen, but as the storm raged outside and warmth slowly returned to her limbs, Kaida allowed herself to feel something she'd abandoned upon arrival on this cursed moon. The ascent. The storm raged for 3 days. Inside Nevin's shelter, time blurred into a haze of recovery and uneasy silence. Kaida's strength returned gradually, her body fighting to heal from weeks of exposure to Eremos' poisonous atmosphere. Each morning, Nevin changed her medical patches, administered supplements, and checked her vitals with quiet efficiency, never pressing for information, never offering more than necessary. On the 4th day, when the acid rain finally ceased, Kaida found herself watching him work at his communications array. His fingers moved with practiced precision over salvaged circuit boards, rewiring connections and calibrating frequencies. There was something mesmerizing about his methodical approach, the way he coaxed life from broken things. "You're not just a salvager," she observed, her voice stronger now. "That's Republic military engineering training." Nevin paused, not looking up from his work. "Was a lifetime ago. And yet you kept the insignia." He set down his tools and turned to face her. Something shifted in his expression, a decision made. "Some mistakes you don't get to forget. Some debts you can't repay." Kaida pulled herself to her feet, testing her steadiness. "I think it's time we stopped dancing around each other. You know who I am, what division I served in. That's not coincidence." "No," he agreed. "It's not." "Then why are you here? Why save me?" Nevin stood, moving to a storage compartment. He retrieved a small metal container and brought it to the table between them. "Because of heliostation," he said simply, opening the container to reveal a data crystal. "Because 47 civilians survived that day because of you." Kaida's breath caught. "You know about that?" "I was there," he said. "Not on your ship. On the engineering deck of the Republic cruiser Adamant. I was the one who received your unauthorized docking request." Memory flashed through her mind, a calm voice over comms granting her emergency clearance despite command's orders to refuse her entry. She'd never learned the identity of the officer who'd broken protocol to let her dock. "You," she whispered. "Me," he confirmed. "I got court-martialed too, though not as publicly as you. Accessory to insubordination. They buried it because it would have been embarrassing to admit two officers had defied orders on the same day. But you still ended up here. By choice, not sentence. After my discharge, I started looking into other incidents. Command decisions that didn't add up. Civilian casualties classified as acceptable losses. I found patterns." He gestured to the data crystal. "Evidence. Enough to threaten certain careers. Enough to get me marked." "So you disappeared," Kaida concluded. "To the one place they'd never look for anyone alive." His mouth curved in a grim smile. "By then, I knew they'd sent you here. I didn't expect to find you breathing." Kaida absorbed this, piecing together the fragments of truth. "You came looking for me specifically." "Why?" Nevin's eyes met hers, unflinching. "Because you were the only other person I knew who'd made the right choice when it counted. Because I thought, if you were still alive, maybe we could do something with what I found." He fell silent as Kaida processed his words. Outside, the caustic wind howled around the shelter's reinforced walls, a constant reminder of the hostile world beyond their fragile sanctuary. "I have something to tell you too," she said finally, her voice low. "Something I never told anyone, not the tribunal, not my commanding officers." Nevin waited, giving her space to find her words. "When they sentenced me, I was carrying a child." Her hand moved unconsciously to her abdomen. "Early stages, I barely knew myself. The medical scan during processing was how I found out." Shock registered briefly in Nevin's eyes before understanding dawned. "The impact when they dropped you here. The pod wasn't designed for safe landings." Her voice remained steady though the pain was evident in her eyes. "By the time I regained consciousness, I was bleeding. Just one more thing Eremos took from me." Nevin didn't offer hollow sympathies. Instead, he asked, "The father?" "Lieutenant Commander Jace Harrow. Tactical Division." Her laugh held no humor. "We weren't in love, just two soldiers finding comfort during a long deployment. When I told him about my sentencing, he said nothing. Did nothing. Turned his back and walked away." "I'm sorry," Nevin said simply. "I buried it all," she continued. "The grief, the rage, the shame. Became what they wanted, a ghost fading into nothing on this forsaken rock." She fixed her gaze on him. "Until you arrived." The silence between them was no longer strained but shared, a recognition of parallel journeys that had somehow converged in this unlikely place. "So what now?" she asked. "We leave," Nevin replied. "My ship's damaged but reparable. I've been gathering parts, working on it at night when the temperatures drop enough to make the engine bay accessible." Hope stirred in Kaida's chest. "How close is it to flight ready?" 3. maybe 4 days of work. Sooner with help. He tilted his head, assessing her. Feel up to getting your hands dirty, navigator? For the first time since her arrival on Eremos, Kaida smiled, a small thing, but genuine. Lead the way, engineer. They worked through the twin sun cycles, salvaging parts from Nevin's hidden caches across the barren landscape. His ship, an old Cormorant-class transport modified almost beyond recognition, was hidden in a deep ravine 2 kilometers from the shelter, nestled between towering crystalline formations that shielded it from orbital scans. As they repaired the damaged atmospheric seals and recalibrated the navigation array, a rhythm developed between them, an unspoken language of tools passed without request, problems anticipated before they arose. They moved in tandem, as if they'd been working side by side for years rather than days. On the 6th day, as Kaida was elbow-deep in the ship's coolant system, a sound cut through the air, a high-pitched whine, distant but unmistakable. Drone, Nevin said sharply, dropping his tools. Republic Scout class. Kaida's blood ran cold. How? Nothing survives the atmospheric entry without proper shielding, he finished grimly. They've upgraded their search technology. We need to move. Now. They gathered their tools with frantic efficiency, all pretense of careful work abandoned. As they secured the ship, the drone's whine grew louder, circling the canyon above them. It hasn't spotted us yet, Nevin said, studying the scanner in his hand. But it will. These ravines won't hide our heat signatures forever. How much more work on the ship? Secondary thrusters are still offline. Without them, we can achieve orbit but not break atmosphere. Kaida's mind raced through calculations. The acid storms, they disrupt scanning technology. If we time our launch during the next storm front, we'd be flying blind, Nevin warned. Not with a navigator, she countered. This is what I was trained for. I can get us through the storm layer. Nevin studied her face, then nodded once. The next front is 8 hours out. Think we can finish the thrusters by then? We have to, she said simply. They worked in tense silence, the drone's periodic passes overhead a constant reminder of the closing window of opportunity. Kaida's muscles screamed with exhaustion, but she pushed through, focusing on the intricate wiring of the thruster control systems while Nevin repaired the fuel injection lines. 6 hours later, as the horizon darkened with the approaching storm, the first warning alert sounded from Nevin's scanner. They've picked up something, he said, checking the readings. Not definitive, but they're sending a second drone to investigate. Kaida wiped sweat from her brow, leaving a streak of engine grease across her forehead. How much longer? Final sequence initialization and we're done. 20 minutes, maybe 30. She nodded toward the approaching storm front. That puts us cutting it dangerously close to the storm's edge. Beats the alternative, Nevin replied, sliding back under the console to make the final connections. 19 minutes later, the ship's systems hummed to life. The cockpit lights illuminated, casting a warm glow across their exhausted faces. Kaida took the pilot's seat, her hands moving across the unfamiliar controls with growing confidence. Pre-flight checks complete, she announced. All systems operational. Nevin strapped into the co-pilot seat beside her. Storm's almost on us. Second drone is 3 minutes out. Kaida engaged the primary thrusters, feeling the ship shudder beneath them as it broke free from the ground. Here goes nothing, she murmured. They rose from the ravine just as the storm's outer bands reached them, sheets of acid rain hammering against the viewports. The navigation systems immediately began to fail, disrupted by the storm's electromagnetic properties. Switching to manual, Kaida called over the roar of the engines. Her hands danced across the controls, compensating for the wild buffeting of the winds. "Plot me a course out, I'll fly it blind if I have to." Nevin worked the navigation computer, feeding coordinates directly to her console. Course plotted. "It's rough, but it should get us above the storm layer." The ship bucked violently as they ascended through the turbulence. Warning lights flashed across the console, hull integrity strained, shield capacity diminishing under the caustic assault. Below them, through breaks in the storm, they caught glimpses of Republic drones converging on their position. "They've spotted us," Nevin warned. "Interceptors will be scrambled within minutes." Kaida's jaw set with determination. "They'll have to catch us first." She pushed the engines harder, feeling the vibrations through the control yoke as they approached their structural limits. The storm clouds thinned above them, revealing patches of star-studded blackness. "Almost there," she breathed. A sudden impact rocked the ship, throwing them sideways in their restraints. A peripheral scanner showed a missile detonation, the blast partially deflected by the storm's intensity. "Interceptors already in orbit," Nevin confirmed grimly. "They were waiting for us." Kaida's mind raced. "The data crystal, you said it had evidence. Of Republic war crimes?" "Among other things." "Why?" "Open a channel. Broadcast frequency." Understanding dawned on Nevin's face. "You're going to threaten them with exposure." "Not threaten. Promise." Her eyes gleamed with fierce determination. "They're not killing us without consequences." Nevin hesitated only briefly before establishing the connection. "Channel open. Broadcasting to all Republic frequencies." Kaida took a deep breath. "Republic vessels, this is former Lieutenant Kaida Voss. We have in our possession evidence documenting systematic civilian casualties and cover-ups authorized by High Command, including the Helio Station incident. This data has been encrypted and set for automatic release to all major news networks should our ship be destroyed. Stand down your weapons and clear a path for our departure." Silence stretched for long seconds, broken only by the dwindling storm impacts as they broke through the upper atmosphere. Then a voice crackled through the comms, authoritative, coldly professional. "Voss, this is Captain Alara Tehran of the Republic cruiser Vigilant. What you're attempting is treason." "What I'm attempting is survival," Kaida replied steadily. "The treason was committed by those who ordered the abandonment of civilians on Helio Station. Check your records, Captain. I saved 47 lives that day. Lives your command was willing to sacrifice." Another pause, longer this time. Nevin's hand found Kaida's across the console, squeezing gently in silent support. "Stand by," Captain Tehran said finally. Minutes passed, the tension in the cockpit thick enough to cut. The interceptors maintained position but held their fire as the ship cleared Eremos' atmosphere completely. Stars spread out before them, infinite possibilities after months of confinement. The comms crackled again. "Voss, you have a one-time clearance corridor to the edge of Republic space. Coordinates are being transmitted now. Once you cross that boundary, you are never to return to Republic territory. Is that understood?" Kaida exchanged a look with Nevin, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Understood, Captain." "And Voss?" Tehran's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "Those 47 civilians from Helios? They formed a colony on Talos 4. They're thriving." The transmission cut off, leaving them in stunned silence. Tears pricked at Kaida's eyes, not of sorrow but of vindication, of knowing her sacrifice had meant something. Nevin's navigation console pinged with the received coordinates. "Course laid in," he said quietly. "Where to after that is up to you." Kaida looked out at the stars spread before them, then back at the man who had brought her back from the edge of death, the man who had refused to look away when everyone else had. "Wherever it is," she said, her voice steadier than it had been in months, "we go together." As they accelerated away from Eremos, leaving behind the desolation that had nearly claimed them both, Kaida felt something unfamiliar growing within her, not just hope, but possibility. The past couldn't be changed, but the future stretched before them, unmarked and waiting. For the first time since her exile, Kaida Voss was no longer falling. She was rising, ascending toward something new. And she wasn't alone.